Hello everyone, and welcome to another Mondays with Michelle video. This is the fourth video in my military research series. This week, we'll look at various websites with information on prisoner of war records. Let's get started. Continuing with our military theme that we've been doing, I went down the rabbit hole of looking at prisoner of war records and information. So I realize that this is a topic that may not have direct application to the research a lot of you are doing, but there are some interesting resources that may help you in your more general research. So I wanted to just bring some of those to your attention. So what I'm going to show you, there are a few websites that provide some useful background information, including this one, the British Library, which does have some information on what life was like for prisoners of war. There are some documents with images that might be of interest. It talks about how some of the prisoners of war were used as forced labor. Another website with excellent resources is the Imperial War Museum. And this particular page, Voices of the First World War, Prisoners of War, is part of a podcast series. I believe there are 50 different podcasts on all aspects of the First World War. So there are a lot of resources with really interesting background information on both the First World War and the Second World War. But this particular page, you can either read the accounts from various prisoners of war outlining their experiences, or you can play the podcast and listen to the soldiers relate their stories. And if you're interested in additional general information on the First World War, all aspects, this page contains all of the episodes in that podcast series. And as I said, there are 50 episodes. So if we just scroll down, you can see the range of topics that are covered. Similarly, if we go into stories and videos, which is where all of this First World War information is located, and if we search on Second World War and click the magnifying glass or press enter, you will see a lot of different collections of information on World War II. And you'll notice that there are some related to prisoners of war. So if we go back up to the top and we add in POW and click the magnifying glass, as you can see, there are a number of collections featuring information on prisoners of war in the Second World War. So we've got what was life like for prisoners in the Far East, what life was like for prisoners in Europe. We've got accounts of the sinking of prisoner of war transport ships. We've got stories of escape attempts. So a large number of collections with useful information for those of you that want to get a better idea of what your prisoner of war ancestors might have experienced. This web page on the National Records of Scotland website, there is a write-up about Scottish prisoners of war, and it talks about what it was like for them in captivity. It talks about different plans that were in place to help provide support in terms of food, clothing, etc., sent by the family members at home to the prisoners. So there is a lot of useful background information on this particular website. Now, I also found this one article in the International Encyclopedia of the First World War that talks specifically about prisoners of war in Russia. And although most of the resources I'm showing you are to do with British and Allied prisoners of war who were captured by the enemy, there are also some resources here for prisoners that were captured by the Allies and held in various camps and facilities in England or in other countries. So I'm trying to give you resources on both sides because some of you may be tracing German ancestors who were prisoners of war captured by the Allies in World War I. So this article talks about prisoners of war in Russia and their experience. So there's a range of information here. Now, we've looked at the Forces War Records website before, and I had mentioned they have a number of research guides. So I do want to highlight two guides that they have specifically on prisoners of war. So this particular one involves some interviews, some stories about experiences as a prisoner of war. And this second guide is very much instructions, hints on how to trace a prisoner of war ancestor and the kinds of records that are available. So both of those are really useful guides. Another link on that same Forces War Records website is this page, which is an article giving all kinds of information. And one of the points that they make is that for World War I, a lot of the interviews with prisoners of war, a lot of the documents have not survived. The survival rate is much greater for World War II information, but they do mention a few websites, which I will be showing you. They also mention this WO161, the War Office 161 collection of records at the National Archives. And they say it does include interviews conducted with returning prisoners of war in 1918. So those records I found quite fascinating. So when you go into the War Office 161 records, the description here says at the bottom, also included are papers of the Committee on the Treatment of British Prisoners of War. So what I ended up doing was clicking this browse link to see what was included in this series. And when I click the browse link, it opens up this War Office 161 category, and on the right, you can see all of the different collections of information. And when I scroll down through all of these records, and I ended up paging forward a bit, I discovered the section where it actually had the prisoner interviews. And I'll just skip ahead to that. So as you can see, these entries here are indexes to some of the interviews that they did. And if we keep scrolling down, there are actually a few entries that are the reports, not just the index. So what I did was downloaded one of those reports because some of this information, not all of it, but some of it has been digitized and it is available for free as long as you just set up an account, and it's free to set up the account with the National Archives. So here's an example of an extract. Let me just zoom in a bit. So here's an example of some of the interviews with those returning prisoners of war. So they got information about particular internment camps here. So we can see this is on the Parchim camp, the Gustro camp. And then these are now interviews with individuals who were prisoners of war and are now returning. I mentioned that the National Archives does have its own research guide on this collection, this War Office 161 collection of records. So here is their guide. They have instructions on searching, and they provide a really convenient search screen. The National Archives also has a few other guides. They have this general guide, Prisoners of War in British Hands. They give you the different collections on the National Archives website that might have information. They also mention that Find My Past does have some of these records. You would need a subscription to Find My Past in order to view them. But again, they provide information for the Second World War as well, giving you links to information about different interrogation reports, different POW camps. So there is quite a bit of information available. And this guide covers prisoners of war prior to World War I and World War II. So we've got some information that might help you locate records for the Boer War, for any prisoners of war up to 1855. So there are some good links there that would be helpful. There is also a guide on the National Archives under internees. And again, they talk about where you can find some of this information. Some of it is on Find My Past, and some of it is in different groups of records in the National Archives. So the Home Office 396 series has some information, and they show you an example of some of the types of information that you could find. So this is an exemption from internment card. This website is really interesting to look at. It was a project to consolidate all of the lists of prisoners of war, and you have the ability to search by name, nationality, and status, whether they were military or civilian. So the way this website works, you would put in a surname. You need to specify a nationality. You need to specify whether you're looking for military or civilian. And you would start your search. And it will come back with a list of entries on the left, your search results. And what you are seeing, these entries relate to cards, like basically a card index that has been digitized with information on these prisoners of war. And this website is sponsored or put together by the Red Cross. So what you will find, sometimes the cards are organized just by name. Sometimes it is organized by their unit and then alphabetical within the units. So some of the entries, like it says Whitaker, West Yorkshire Regiment, and there's 13 entries. That means under the West Yorkshire section of this index, there were 13 cards with Whitakers listed. For the whites, there are 42 cards, and then you have additional cards of more whites that are divided up under their individual units. And the way this works, I'll just show you one of the examples I pulled up. So if we were looking at William White, and you notice there's some entries on here, SOLD for soldier. It's giving the unit he served in. And these cryptic numbers, the PA 12697, PA 13040, those are references to other cards or other documents that have related information. So what you would do is click this additional information. It brings you to a new screen, and you would type in one of these PA numbers. So if I type in 13692 and then click search, it's going to bring me to a new document with information on this individual. And I found I got very skilled at going to Google Translate German to English and typing in some of the headings to figure out what the documents were saying. So I know that this word up at the top where it says, the column where it says SOLD, this word is German for the word rank. So if you find you've got some information, you've got an ancestor that was in these records, Google Translate is a great help to figure out what these headings are. So if we go back, let me do the back arrow here, I could type in the next entry, and I think that's the 3. 19322, and we've got another document, and if I go through it, there's William White. So again, this one has his home address or address of his next of kin. So again, more information about this particular prisoner of war. Now, if we go back on this website, this Red Cross website, if we go back to the home page, they've got a little video clip. They've got some information on, let me just scroll up, examples of the different kinds of cards that you will see. They've got a section, Life in Internment Camps. And what's nice about this is it's showing on a map where the different internment camps are. You can also just select from this list on the left to zoom in and see where that camp was located. So This is giving you the list of camps. And if we click home to go back to the first page and scroll down to the bottom, there are 3 different sections. We have the section called Accounts, which is information, interviews with some of the prisoners of war, and we have different categories here. So again, if you want to read about some rescue attempts, these are narratives of this soldier's comrade and talking about the attempt to rescue that soldier. We've got infantry battle accounts. We've got accounts talking about searching for missing individuals. So there's a lot of information there. We have this postcard section. So if we look at the ones for the UK, it's giving UK British Empire. It's postcards, images of the life of the prisoners of war. So again, some really interesting resources that you might want to take a look at. And the last link I wanted to show you was the Family Search Research Wiki. This contains information and links for US World War I prisoners of war. And as you can see, there are all kinds of clickable links to record sources. I hope you've enjoyed this week's video. Don't forget to download the handout. You'll find the link in the video description at the bottom of your screen. You may need to click Show More to see the handout links. Thanks for watching.